It is clear, I think, who would be on one side of the table, and that's of course the de facto authorities. It is more difficult to decide or to find a way of who should represent other Afghans. And in fact, I don't think we should necessarily think about this as a table with two sides. I think we should think about it more as a round table, where you have different interests, different political interests, different ethnic origins, men and women who can come together. I would love to see this happening tomorrow in Kabul. I don't think that is realistic at national level. And I think perhaps smaller steps in that direction, day-to-day engagement, not necessarily always about the most contentious political issues, but dialogue at provincial level, at local level, showing from the side of the de facto authorities that they feel responsible and responsive to the people, that they recognize that all Afghans indeed have Afghanistan as their home, or should have the possibility of having Afghanistan as their home, would be first starting steps. So I don't have an idea, and I don't think it would help if I would put, a proposal on the table on what the process would look like. But I think there is a need, and I think there is a chance for Afghans to move forward. And I think the only or the best chance for Afghans to move forward is indeed by establishing informal and perhaps gradually a more formal dialogue where people are listened to and people have a voice. When we speak to Afghans here, there are some exceptions. There are people who are under threat and who need to leave the country. But most Afghans we speak to here say, we don't want to leave, we want to live. We want to have opportunities here. And what we try to contribute to in a modest way, but with substantial financial resources and the commitment of Rafaela and her team, and perhaps a little bit also the few visits I make and the work back in headquarters, is to help make Afghanistan livable, for Afghanistan to be a choice and an opportunity. That is the overall and the long-term ambition. At the same time, of course, we have smugglers, we have people who exploit the desperation of people, and there we have to find ways. I mean, it's a responsibility of the de facto authorities, but it is also a responsibility, I think, from European countries and from the EU, where we can, to help and assist and contribute to defeating or to preventing this from happen. It is, as I said, it's a human tragedy, and we should recognize it as that, but we also have to try to find ways of preventing more people from facing similar. The EU continues to deliver humanitarian assistance through our partners, where Afghan women can meaningfully participate in the assessment of needs, in the delivery of assistance, and in the monitoring of activities, and which makes it possible for assistance to reach women. And as I mentioned, during our visit to Kandahar, we also had an opportunity to see the delivery of very much needed humanitarian assistance in cooperation with UN agencies, reaching men, women, and children. While we strive to respond to humanitarian needs, we also need to search for long-term solutions and ways to stabilize the economy. Some data, including from the World Bank, indicate that the economy in Afghanistan is beginning to stabilize, but at a much lower level than before. Revenue collection by the de facto authorities has improved. At the same time, over-compliance with sanctions by international financial institutions remains an obstacle to legitimate financial transactions to and from Afghanistan. The foreign currency reserves of the Afghan Central Bank remains frozen abroad, and the isolation of the Afghan Central Bank from the international payment system remain considerable challenges, and this, as we know, is due to legitimate concerns about the independence of the Afghan Central Bank and its capacity on anti-money laundering and countering on the financing of terrorism. To help meet basic needs and provide livelihood support for Afghan men and women, the EU has committed in the last 18 months 420 million euros delivered through UN agencies and NGOs in a principled way. But to help stabilize the economy and allow it to grow, there is also a long list of actions expected from the de facto authorities, which we consistently repeat. They include providing a clear constitutional and legal framework underpinned by rule of law in line with international standards that offers citizens and foreign investors legal protection. It includes providing budget transparency about revenue collection and expenditure and continued fight against corruption where we see that some progress has been made. It includes providing job opportunities also for women in ministries and allowing them to work in all other sectors, including running businesses, rather than restricting them from working. And it includes investing in the future by offering boys and girls throughout the country quality education to prepare them for a new labor market. Also, in this context, the fight against opium cultivation and drug production, with all the negative consequences inside and outside the country, remains important. And the de facto authorities spoke in our meetings about their commitment to implement the ban announced and to seek ways to rehabilitate drug addicts. The human rights situation in Afghanistan remains highly concerning. This is being analyzed and described in a very clear and precise manner in the latest report on the human rights situation in Afghanistan by the Special Rapporteur, Richard Bennett, which he's going to present at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva tomorrow. During our visit, we have focused our discussions on human rights primarily on the rights of women and girls, notably the right to education, the right to work and participate in social and political life. I already referred to the ban by the de facto authorities in December on women working for NGOs. And beyond the consequences on the delivery of assistance, this is a clear violation of the right of women to work, which impacts gravely on their ability to provide for themselves and for their families. Secondary schools remain closed for girls in most parts of the country since 18 months. And in December, the de facto authorities announced that also universities would be closed for women. I raised these issues in several of my meetings with acting ministers, and although many confirmed the right of girls and women to study, I did not hear any firm commitment that schools were going to open at the beginning of the school year after Nowruz, despite very clear question from our side. But opening the schools and universities to provide quality education to Afghan boys and girls, women and men is not optional. It is a necessary investment in the future, in the next generation, in a better Afghanistan. And above all, it is an action, it's a request by all the Afghans we speak to. In our meeting with the Acting Minister of Information and Culture, we discussed the role of media, and I underlined the importance of free media to provide accurate information about developments in Afghanistan, positive and negative, and also to keep Afghanistan connected to the world. The Acting Minister declared his full commitment to free media and confirmed the prime responsibility of his ministry in addressing challenges or obstacles faced by journalists. We also discussed with journalists and media workers this morning the situation of media press freedom and the constraints they are facing. They spoke to us about the legal uncertainty, that freedom of speech is not guaranteed or respected, that access to information is not guaranteed by law. They spoke about the massive financial uncertainty given the closure of many media outlets due to the economic situation and loss of revenue from commercials. They spoke about continued, and some mentioned worsening, intimidation by the GDI and by the Ministry for the promotion of virtue and prevention of vice. They spoke about self-censorship because of uncertainty of what can be said and what will be tolerated. And in addition to that, female journalists face additional challenges. They do not have access, we understand, to press conferences, to public gatherings. They are not allowed to make interviews with decision makers from the de facto authorities. They are subject to an imposed dress code, and they also speak about a clear perception of danger. So if journalists are facing difficulties, female journalists are facing double difficulties and stand at risk. In our meetings with the de facto authorities, we also raised the security situation, and since my last visit 5 months ago, we have seen severe attacks claimed by ISIS-KP or Daesh, including attacks in Kabul against diplomatic missions and Afghan ministries. The de facto authorities informed us about some of their actions taken and referred to a number of effective operations. They also declared their full commitment to continue to fight Daesh, which constitutes a serious threat to Afghans and to Afghanistan, but also to the region and beyond. In these talks, I also relayed concerns by some countries in the region about Afghan soil still being used by terrorist organizations to threaten the security of these countries. But for peace to be consolidated and sustained, and for non-Taliban Afghans to feel included, there is a need for dialogue, institutions, and processes to be put in place under a clear constitutional framework. Let me be clear, the EU is not supporting armed resistance, neither politically nor in other ways. Afghanistan has seen too much violence over the last 4 decades, and now there is a chance to break the cycle of violence. But for this to happen, all Afghans must get a chance to engage in dialogue, express their views freely, and see chances for themselves to have a voice about the direction in which the country is going. Unfortunately, there is little evidence of any substantial progress in this field, and certainly not at national level. Patience has often been referred to in our conversations over the last few days, and patience is indeed a good quality and may be needed, but it has to be sustained by indications of hope. In all our meetings in Kabul and Kandahar with all our interlocutors, there was a strong welcoming of EU permanent presence in the country, the only European presence for the moment, and also appreciation for our visit. NGOs and civil society representatives called on us to sustain or increase our assistance to the people of Afghanistan, and some of them suggested alternative ways to deliver assistance or new areas for potential support, with a strong focus on the local level, with women-led organizations as implementing partners, and with women as recipients. Acting ministers expressed, and that was also confirmed from our side, an interest in continued dialogue with the EU to address concerns and solve problems. We remain committed to this while being clear that a qualitative change in our relationship over time, including possibly direct cooperation or support, remains subject to credible and consistent progress by the de facto authorities on a series of issues: human rights, security, inclusive governance, independent humanitarian access, and safe passage. We shall continue to look for opportunities and respond positively where there are signs of progress, while we also reserve the right to respond to negative decisions. Again, Let me express my gratitude to everybody who took the time to receive us and share their assessments, concerns, ideas and hope. The EU remains committed to maintaining its presence, diplomatic and humanitarian, in Afghanistan. We remain committed to assisting and interacting with the people of Afghanistan, and our doors remain open to dialogue with the de facto authorities and other Afghans within the country and abroad, to hopefully contributing to solutions and to a sustainable peace.
پژواک خبری اژانس د پیښو ریښتینې هنداره